Hi there. Welcome back to Nico Talks Hockey. Today I want to talk about the offseason, the NHL offseason and how it's going so far. There's been so much that's happened, and I want to cover the results of the draft and who I think, won and lost the draft. And then I want to talk about free agency and who I thought fared well in free agency, who got some nice players that I think will complement their team really well, take them maybe to a next step or next level. And then who I think, either missed out completely on players they were trying to get, or they signed players to, in my opinion, really bad deals, and deals that will probably hurt their team for a while, depending on the length of the contract and all that. So, yeah, I just want to start with let's start with the draft here. So, winners of the draft, I have three winners, and they're all the three teams that drafted first, second, and third. So, the New York Islanders are my number one winner for the draft, for obvious reasons, not only because they got the best player in the draft, Matthew Schaefer. We'll see, obviously. It's too early to call who's the for sure best player in the draft. That's why they're prospects, right? But almost every scout has Matthew Schaefer turning into the best NHL player down the road. So yeah, no, Matthew Schaefer is going to be a legit top two on any given team NHL caliber defenseman. So great for them. And then they get the other two picks in the first round. They get Eklund, and they also get Aitchison. So they get another top six talent, I think, in Eklund. I think he's he shouldn't have fallen that low, honestly. Eklund is phenomenal. And then Aitchison, I think I compare him to like Jacob Trouba, and although Trouba has his deficiencies, he's a top four defenseman on a team. So to get someone who's a freight train, an Aitchison who can just smash you over, and is a great physical defenseman, and then Eklund, a top six forward, and then also Schaefer, who can be on your top line of defense for forever. What a fantastic draft for New York. Number two, I have San Jose Sharks. San Jose Sharks get my personal favorite forward in this draft, which is Michael Misa. Now, obviously, again, time will tell. We don't know. It's a little too early, but by all projections, Michael Misa looks to be the best forward in this draft, and he could be, a future 90 to 100 point player. He's so dynamic. I've talked about Misa before. I've gone on and on about how much I like his game, and for them to get him at number two, obviously it's everyone knew that Schaefer was going to go first after a little bit. Hagens wasn't going to go first after the first half month of speculation. So Misa fell into the Sharks' lap, and they took him. I know there was a little bit of speculation were they going to take Frondell, but no, they went Misa. And then they also get Ravensburg at the back end of the first round, and I really like that pick. I know that they have their goal of the future. They already have their goal of the future, but Ravensburg projects to be maybe a 1B type of in like a tandem, and I think that's a fantastic pick to look at their future and see that spot of goaltending is it looks to be all shored up if they can just develop these goalies well. And then lastly, I have the Chicago Blackhawks, my Chicago Blackhawks, at number three for the winners of the draft. They get Frondell, who's my second favorite forward prospect in this draft. He's awesome. Look, I love Frondell. I'm liking him more and more each day. I really like the comparisons to Barkov. If he turns out to be, anywhere close to Barkov's level, I'm so very happy about that because he's my personal favorite player who's not in the Chicago Blackhawks. I love the way he plays. I think he is the most complete player in the entire game. And he's just, like many scouts said, right, Frondell is built like a truck. He's built like a tank. So, he uses his body too in terms of his physicality. So I love that. And then also going for size. They get two more first round picks They get Nestrasil, who's like 6'6", 6'5", 6'6", and then they also get Mason West, which is the most interesting prospect I've seen in so long. Plays two sports, plays football and plays hockey, has not committed to either yet, but after next year, he'll go back, he'll go for one more year at his school, his high school, and play one more year of high school football, and then fully commit himself to hockey. But I just love all the raw tools there. You have to be excited for someone who's, 6'6", and, uses his reach, uses his size, and his composure too. After seeing his interviews, he seems like someone who's, like a natural born leader, or someone who's just very composed. So very cool to see Mason West. I know some people were like, that's too much of a reach. I like it. I like swinging for the fences for someone who's got a ton of upside. Moving on to losers of the draft. I don't know if there's any like true losers, but if I have to pick some, there's two. And the number one loser of the draft, I think, is the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins, I did not love who they picked at 11th overall. Benjamin Kindle. I don't think he was worthy of that spot. Eklund was still available. There were other people who I thought were better value picks there. So don't love it. Even their later picks, like Bill Zonin at 22nd. Will Horkoff at 24, I can get down with. I thought that was good value. But yeah, I thought they could do better than Kindle. So for that reason, just the context of where the Penguins are right now, they should be going for highest upside, and they're really going into a rebuild here. We'll see what the future brings for them in next year. Like where will they rank in their standings? I think they're going to be pretty low. I think they're going to be in the basement here. But yeah, so I think they should have gotten a higher tier prospect. I would have loved to see Kyle Dubas, trade up, figure out how to trade, get rid of Rust, get rid of a lot of their players, right? That they could probably stand to give up for assets, because look, everyone can recognize that Pittsburgh needs a rebuild. I understand that Crosby, Malkin, Letang are still there, but it's time, and they probably know it's time too. So yeah, I would have liked to see them just do a little bit more, because I don't think that Kindle and Zonin, I don't think they cut it. But then my other loser of the draft, I think, is the Nashville Predators. I don't think they're as big of a loser, so to speak, as the Pittsburgh Penguins, but I do have them as my loser because, again, I don't know if Barry Trotz knows what he's doing. All respect to him. I thought he was an unbelievable coach, but as a GM, I think he's one of the worst in the game. I don't say that to be mean or anything, but that's just genuinely how I feel. I don't know if he's not sticking to any plan. He keeps, flip-flopping between absolutely going for it and then being okay with being mediocre or much worse. So if you're going to do that, then you want to get really high-value draft picks and get a lot of them. And what they did, I don't know, like, they got Brady Martin at 5th. And I thought there were 3 or 4 or 5 better players they could have gotten instead of Brady Martin. That's just me talking. I know there's lots of different opinions on who should have gone. But Brady Martin that high, I'm just not that high on Brady Martin. I thought that, Higgins was still available and Martone was available. So I don't know. I just thought there were some higher caliber players that were there for the picking. I was higher on O'Brien, who the Kraken ended up taking. I was higher on O'Brien than Martin. So I don't love to see the Predators take Martin, but maybe their scouts just fell in love with him, and time will tell, right? Moving on to free agency. We'll talk about free agency, and then I'll talk about just who's having the best offseason in general so far. So free agency, there's 3 clear winners, but there's one clear winner. That's the Florida Panthers. What the Florida Panthers have been able to do what Bill Zito has been able to do, which is get his back-to-back championship core all signed through like 2030. He's got Marshawn down. He's got Verhage down. He's got Kachuk and Barkov and Sam Bennett, Lundell. He's got Ekblad back. Bobrovsky's got one more year at his huge cap hit, and then they'll either find another goalie, or what likely will happen is they'll just get Bobrovsky back on a lower cap hit. You've got Jones, you've got Forsling, you've got the core. It's such a good core. Obviously, it's won back-to-back Stanley Cups, and now they're running it back for the next 6 years. So good for them. Best general manager in the business. Bill Zito continues to prove that at least. I know that Jim Nill keeps winning the best GM of the year. I don't know if that's correct. I look to the back-to-back Stanley Cup winning GM as the best in the business. My second winner of free agency, I have the Knights. Now, I guess it's not technically free agency, but the Knights got Marner. The Knights got the biggest free agent on the market. And I know that he didn't technically get there because it was a trade, but I'm still including it because you can't not include Marner. At least that's my way of thinking. So the biggest free agent talked about for the whole year, right? The Knights get Marner, and that's awesome for them. If any team is able to unlock, the postseason abilities that Marner might have in there, I think it's the Vegas Golden Knights. They've got such a culture of winning, such a culture of accountability that, putting him alongside Eichel, or even putting him on the second line, and then, having those fantastic players to drive offense, play drivers, right? If Eichel's in that top line, you can put Marner next to him, and you've got one of the best first lines in the entire game. Or you can put him on the second line, and now you have two potent lines that drive offense. So either way you cut it, it's great business. You give it Waugh to do it, Nick Waugh, and I like Nick Waugh. I think he's going to be great on the Leafs, but Marner is the clear better player and the player they needed. So good for the Knights for getting him. Third winner of the free agency 2025, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. I thought they did well. Getting Michelli, who I'm pretty high on. I think that he's been underutilized in Utah. He'll probably play top 6 minutes in Toronto. And then getting Waugh back in the Marner trade, I thought that was great. You keep Tavares. As your second line center now. I would have liked to see them move off him if they could have found a better replacement, or not even a better replacement, but just maybe an equal replacement. Someone, whether in trade or free agency, they weren't able to find it. So, okay, you get Tavares, and you get him at an awesome cap hit. And then you have Waugh as your third line center. I really like that. I think it's a great bit of business. You have Michelli there. And so they're looking really good. Obviously, you lose Marner. You never want to lose a player of that elite caliber, but you have to change up the mix. We've talked about this before. And so losing Marner, in the context of that, I think they did very well. So props to Brad Treliving and company and all those in Toronto Leaf land. The losers of free agency, this came down to teams I mostly thought didn't do enough. So I have the Sabres, a team that it's looking like they're going to miss for 15 years in a row, miss the playoffs. So I just would like them to do more and to bring in more players. Now, I get it. No one wants to go to Buffalo. I totally get that. But still, though, if you're Kevin Adams, general manager in in the greatest hockey league in the world, try harder. I don't know. They didn't do enough. Where other teams, they didn't sit on their hands. I felt like the Sabres sat on their hands. Work a trade out. Trade prospects. You've got a great prospect pool. Trade some of them in order to get now talent because you need to make the playoffs now. So yeah, not overly impressed with the Sabres. Next I have the Bruins. The Bruins, they got Tanner Jeannot on a cap hit that I can't explain. 3.4 million is just not, that's not good business in my opinion. A player that has not been that good for the past 2-3 years. They came over to Tampa in that crazy trade and it didn't work out. And he wasn't really good on the Kings either. So I don't know. I don't love it. I thought they could have gotten him for half that price. So to have Tanner Jeannot now, that cap hit, it's not utilizing your cap space well, in my opinion. And also, they didn't get a ton of other people to. Maybe they're just waiting for Higgins, and then they'll, fill that spot. But it looks like the Bruins are probably in for a bit of a rough year, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to be having a ton of success in the upcoming season. Moving on to the Kraken. The Kraken simultaneously didn't do enough while also being the masters of mid. And also, look, they signed Ryan Lindgren, who I think proved after this year, even hopping teams, he's not good anymore. Ryan Lindgren, wasn't just a Ranger problem. He moved to the Avalanche and he wasn't really good there either. So I think you have enough of that sample size to be like, yeah, no, for whatever reason, we should stay away from Ryan Lindgren. Instead, they signed to a 4-year deal, right? That's too much term, in my opinion, for someone who's as volatile as him. And $4.5 million per year. I can't justify that. So I don't know. I know they need help on defense, but they're gonna have to work miracles to get Lindgren back to what he was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, in New York. And yeah, just a lot of mid. I like their draft pick, Jake O'Brien. I know this is free agency talking, but I like Jake O'Brien. They've got a lot of centers. Maybe they move some of them to the wing. I think they're going to have to, or maybe they trade them. But I guess they're really just trying to make sure that their center depth is as strong as can be, and I can commend that. I will say that's probably pretty smart. Moving on to my biggest loser for agency, I have the Kings. The Kings, I don't know. I just Ken Holland is maybe the worst GM in the league. I don't know how he got another job. It's probably just because the NHL is a big old boys club. But what he did by signing, losing Gavrikov, not being able to sign him, right? Not being able to keep him. Trading Spence, Jordan Spence, who I think, I'm pretty high on Jordan Spence. I think he's quite good. I think he could be a top 4 defenseman, even, top 3 defenseman, 3rd, 4th. Losing both of them, not getting enough value back for Spence, first of all, and then losing Gavrikov, a great shutdown defenseman, has turned himself into a great shutdown defenseman, and replacing them with Brian Dumoulin and Cody Ceci. I can't explain that. And then the cap hits. The cap hits. 3 years for Brian Dumoulin at $4 million. Double what he should be getting, probably. And then Cody Ceci, 4 years at $4.5 million per year. Talk about sample size. Cody Ceci, I feel like, has provided enough to sample size to show that he's not worth this money. Yeah, okay, maybe he's an NHL defenseman. He's good at, being offensive in the offensive zone. He can provide some value. Sure, not $4.5 million worth of value. I am worried about the upcoming season for the Los Angeles Kings. All their, Kopitar and Doughty are getting 1 year older. They best hope that Clark really is the heir to Doughty, because he better be, or they're in a lot of trouble. But then I want to talk a bit about just in general, which teams I think are having the best off seasons so far. So, Panthers signing their core up. They're a winner of the offseason, in my opinion. Probably the number one winner. The Knights, they get Marner, they get their guy, they get the number one big fish. Good for them. They're a winner of the offseason. Talked about the Leafs. Getting Waugh back was nice. Getting Tavares in a much reduced cap hit. They've got cap space to work with. They're going to work and trying to get another top six player, I'm sure of it, in their forward group. So they could even be more winners. We'll see. But good for the Leafs. They're a winner. Islanders, for what they've been able to do, looks like they're not going to go into the rebuild, but more of a retool. So I expect next year, this upcoming season, to be quite rough for the Islanders, but it may not last that long because they've got a nice prospect pool now. Definitely a top half prospect pool that used to be probably the worst one in the whole league. They've turned it around. I still think they probably could move off some players like, Pajot, like, Pellick and Pullock, that just don't fit the age range that they're going to go moving forward. If you got to keep Barzal, keep Barzal. But yeah, I don't know. I probably would still try and move off some of those players they got over there. But still, fantastic work so far by Darsh in New York. The Canadians getting Dobson. Speaking of the Islanders, that trade I thought was great for both, but a little bit better for the Canadians because their ascension is now. They made playoffs and now they're going to try and stay in playoffs, and keep getting better, win some rounds, and go for it, right? So Dobson, I love it. I think he's a great defenseman. Probably the cap hit's probably a little too high, but it's okay. They have the cap space. So I really like Dobson for the Canadians. I still think they need to figure out their second line center spot. Kirby Dach, unfortunately, is not going to cut it unless he has the craziest rebound year ever after coming off another injury. I'm the biggest Kirby Dach fan you'll find around, but it's time to get realistic about this. But yeah, so I really hope that Montreal, in order to stay competitive or continue getting better, I hope that they address their second line center spot. Another winner of the offseason, I actually have the Rangers. The New York Rangers got Gavrikov. I really like that for them. Moving off of Lindgren, getting Scott Morrow back in the Keandre Miller trade with Carolina. I thought that was awesome work by Chris Drury. You get younger there. You get someone who I'm quite high on, Morrow. I don't love the trade for Carolina, honestly. Yeah, sure, they can probably get Keandre Miller, turn into back on track to what he was before last season, but yeah, giving up Scott Morrow and a first, I don't know if that's great value. Morrow I was quite high on. They still have Nikishin, who's their best prospect in their pool, but Morrow was their second best prospect in my opinion. So losing him and a first, it's a bet, that's for sure. It's a risky bet. But Rangers, good job on Gavrikov, good job on getting Morrow and a first that they'll use at next year's deadline to try and get another player. I expect the Rangers to rebound. I think they're going to have a good season upcoming. They're going to make the playoffs, in my opinion. Last two teams I want to talk about here, the Ducks. I thought they've had a great offseason so far, getting Joel Quenneville. I've said before that regardless of many polarizing opinions on him, I still think he's a very good coach. His ability to coach, most recently with the Panthers, was evident. He is still very good. And, him coming in, coaching a very young team to try and finally break through that barrier and reach playoffs. Yeah, it's a great move. Not from the PR standpoint, but that's a different story. They're taking a bet on Chris Kreider, which I think is a great bet. I don't love how much they gave up, but I think that getting Kreider and adding him into your top six and hoping for a rebound, I think is a really good bet there. And yeah, I thought that also, I'm a big fan of Roger McQueen, who they got in the draft, getting him at 10th, who a lot of mock drafts had him going 10th to the Ducks. It's great. I think that if they can somehow just get him on track in terms of injuries. You know, he's had a huge injury-ladled season. If they can make sure he's healthy, he's going to be a number one center. So great get for them, seriously. And then the last winner of the offseason I have is the Utah Mammoth. Utah signed a lot of people, and I loved all of it. Now, obviously, this wasn't a free agent signing, but getting J.J. Peterka, he was the guy I wanted most for Chicago to get. So for him to not be going to Chicago was that was a depressing day for me. I'm so high on Peterka. He's a top line player, in my opinion, and he's only going to get better. So they get Peterka, awesome for them. They still need to figure out their second line center spot, but maybe they're taking their time with that because they drafted Caleb Denoye in the draft, and he projects as like, you know, a second line center. So Cooley, Denoye, I love it. I really do. Obviously, it'll probably be at least a season before Denoye comes. So they're going to have to hope that Hayton is still their second line center. But still, regardless, I liked what they did. They got Yamamoto, who, you know, I think can be unlocked. He'll be your third line player, but still, nice depth there. Scott Perunovich, defenseman, I think is quite underrated, actually. I don't think the St. Louis Blues ever quite utilized him to the best of capabilities. So I like Perunovich signing. Brandon Tanev, more depth. I like it. Can be a middle six player. Nate Schmidt, defenseman, just won the cup. So great veteran presence there for them. Vitek Vanacek can be their backup or third goalie if Ingram comes back. I like that a lot. And then Jack McBain, locking him up for 5 years. I thought that was also a good bit of business there. So I have Utah as my last winner of the offseason. But so I just want to talk about who I thought has done really well this offseason so far. Knights, Panthers, Leafs, Utah, Canadians, Rangers, Ducks, Islanders, Sharks and Hawks in the draft, and then the losers so far of the offseason, which, I had the Kings as my number one loser, I'd say, of the whole offseason. Sorry, Kings. Sorry, LA. Penguins and Predators didn't do so well in the draft. But yeah, those are my losers and winners. Next video upcoming, I'm going to be talking about more prospect pools, and I'm going to be talking about the Blackhawks prospect pool. Who are the top 10 prospects in their pool right now? Because obviously they've had a lot of people who have aged out. So where's the prospect pool looking these days? Thank you so much for watching. I know this has been a long one, but I appreciate everyone who's stayed and watched the whole thing. Thank you so much for watching. Again, it would mean the world to me if you could like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.